All right, so welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now, Eben Joels. He is the lead partner at Transact RSM International, and we're looking at the state of the Nigerian economy. Hello and welcome to you, Mr. Joels.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, welcome. I know we have a lot to cover, so let's just start. I think I will start by getting your view on this currency redesign, since it's what is topical right now, short and sharp. What's your view?
I think it is doing the right thing that is normal in any developed or developing economy. Every country, because of security reasons, from time to time, redesign their currency without too much noise. But there are few countries that impose a very short window to withdraw all currencies in circulation. They do the redesign and withdraw their old currencies without even you knowing that that is being done. Take for example, a few years ago, the $100 bill was completely redesigned, and the old ones were withdrawn gradually over time. Japan did that with some of their currencies, and they gave a long-term. They gave the announcement. For example, currencies that will be introduced in 2024 were announced in 2019. That is in Japan. But we have different approaches, and sometimes this kind of lack of a long-term notification contributes to the anxiety and the relative chaos, that it can cause, especially when you have a short window to withdraw all old currencies in circulation. I was very small in 1984. Well, I remember that it was quite chaotic for people in the village. I was living with my grandmother at the time, and the change then, it was a change of design as well, a change of colors in particular. There are a lot of people that are not so literate. They recognize currency based on their color, and I remember in that time, the colors were just opposed. Now we have the same scenario where we are not told exactly, we're not even shown a specimen of what is going to change. So I think the way the information was passed and the manner it is has done most is the reason for the anxiety that is in the air rather than the act itself.
Okay, do you think, because I heard you clearly when you said the noise surrounding this Naira redesign, that we ought not to have this noise. Do you think that that noise is unfounded, bearing in mind some of the things you've said, the timing? A lot of people have said that we are in a transition period, the CBN doesn't need to do this at this time. And you raised a very valid issue, which is considering the rural population, that majority of them are financially excluded. In many rural communities, there are no banks. And I'm wondering how even the rural dwellers would exchange their old notes for the new notes. What do you think about this?
Like I said, in 1984, we didn't even have this level of internet and POS operators taking deposits. But people had to travel to the nearest town that had a bank. Um, I'll tell you that in 1984, my village didn't have a bank. And this is 2022. The only bank that is there has closed due to armed robbery. So they still don't have a bank. So you're still going to have the chaos where people have to travel and move cash, considering security implication. You get what I mean? I mean, people are ordinarily already afraid to travel without cash for fear of being kidnapped. I think this thing could have been done with more. The CBN owns all Naira, where they could decide to say, okay, over a year, we'll just stop releasing the old versions and then release more of the new. But when you give that short window, it is the poor and the unbanked that pay the price.
Okay, now let's go to another version, which is the e-Naira, because the e-Naira is also from the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's the first digital currency in Africa. It just clocked 1 year a few days ago, October 25. If we take a look at the CBN looking at e-Naira adoption, how do you think that that can go vis-a-vis, especially what we have right now? Is there a way, what do you think will be the impact, really? Bearing in mind that Central Bank Governor did say a few days ago that there's been about 8 billion Naira in transactions for the e-Naira, which is still little anyway, compared to the amount of cash or the amount of transactions that we do out there.
Yeah, I think it's not only I think the whole world is actually watching to see how successful the e-Naira will be, because our e-Naira is one of the first digital currency released by a central bank, so in the world, so I think I don't know which came first, the Chinese or ours, but so the whole world wants to see how an economy the size of ours will deal with digital currency. Now, what I think is that um, you have the issue of trust, you see. The people who use digital currency are people who ordinarily understand the internet. So the internet penetration is high. Are people um, who probably hold digital currency for various reasons. Some of them, they hold it because, for asset depreciation, for fear of inflation, the devaluation of the naira relative to the dollar in the parallel market, which is the real market, you know, is you know what it is. So most people who use digital currency, I do not think CBN has earned their trust, in the sense that CBN at first started with a blanket announcement that banned this digital currency. So if you ban the digital currency and then you release e-Naira, there's already a distrust, because the people who use it, people who hold assets in digital currency, um, will be skeptical. So I think that skepticism will continue for a while. And most of the population, considering internet penetration, that is one. And then two, in fact, if there is massive adoption of digital currency, as you know, it has its own negative effect by taking out the bank, from being an intermediary in the long run. If there is such a pervasive adoption of digital currency, it will create serious issues for the banking sector, because it will take them, it will more or less usurp their role as well when you go into these distributed ledger systems. So that is my point. I don't think that currency in the short term will the level of adoption is going to increase significantly. But what is interesting and what is encouraging is that unlike the Chinese, the level of activity, I mean, $8 billion growth, I mean, 8 billion naira in transaction is small, but it's encouraging. You get what I mean? It's encouraging relative to other countries that have released similar digital um, currencies, where they say they saw a lot of people open their e-wallets, but they weren't using them. So we are encouraged, but I think there's just that optimal, there's just a level where excessive adoption becomes a problem to the entire banking sector. So the CBN knows what it's doing. But, I think we should focus on our Naira, not the E one.
Anyway, because according to the central bank, the e-Naira is equals to even the Naira in terms of how much you hold. So it's like 1 to 1. And you mentioned, I think China started before us, but I know they were mulling it, I think, in 2020. Then this year in January, I think they started adopting it in major cities. That's for their e-yuan. That's what they call it. But let's take a look at another issue around benchmark interest rates. We've seen the Central Bank of Nigeria raising benchmark interest rates, also in tandem with other global banks. The Fed of the U.S. will be meeting tomorrow. We will be waiting to see how that will go. How do you think that this will really affect the economy, bearing in mind that a report from the IMF has said that Nigeria, that's Nigeria CBN and other emerging economies, risk financial stability by continuously increasing interest rates?
I like logic. You get what I mean? I like logic. We want to see things being logical so that so when the CBN tells us that I'm going to bring uh, redesign the naira and give just a 6 weeks window to fade out all currencies because 80%, they said, of all nairas in circulation are not within my control in quotes. They are outside, they are not in the bank book, they're not in quotes, they are saying they're not within my control. So that means logically it will imply that if this 80%, then your banking, then that means your interest rates adjustments do not really. So why didn't you do this first before you start taking that? Why don't you make sure you expand that net to maybe a six, maybe you reduce, you're able to bring in more people into that before you start increasing interest rates, which, of course, by the time the CBN pronounces interest rates, is a benchmark, like you said. There are so many other indices tied to it. So every other person would increase their lending rates. Every other rates will go up. But the impact on the economy, if 80% of the participants in that market are not actively within your purview, in quote, as you've said, based on the currency redesign. So I'm just saying, sometimes you see, we Nigerians sometimes we like to be academic. We move interest rate because maybe everybody says is the right thing to do when you plot this graph and when you plot this graph. But then when we look at practical issues, if 80% of the economy is not within, why didn't we think about the currency redesign first before we start even raising interest rates the way we have raised them this year at every point in time? In
Okay.
any case, hopefully by the time we get more people into the banking, more unbanked Nigerians, maybe at the end of, maybe one of the positive things that should come out of this redesign is that hopefully by the time the CBN has increased its level of control, the amount of unbanked individuals has increased, the amount of currency can actually uh, you know, regulate is increased in size, maybe we'll start seeing it will have a more realistic interest rate that is not an academically imposed interest rate, but it's based on market realities. But right now, I know that inflation pressure is there, inflationary pressure drives interest rates up. But sometimes, in an economy like ours that is still um, developing and has its own um, unique nuances, yeah, it is not every textbook solution that is going to work, you know.
Okay.
The way it is, the average man thinks that a noose is on his neck and is just being squeezed in whatever form. Whether you tell him there's too much money in circulation, and the average man says, I don't even see the money. So why are they saying there's too much money in circulation? But in actual fact, he goes to buy anything, the prices are doubling every day. So he knows that there's inflationary pressure as well. So my point is finding that balance where the average individual does not feel that there is a noose on his neck is the job of an astute um economist, which I think we need more of.
Okay, let's still dwell a bit on this inflation and the impact, because it's like people don't really, people understand, okay, they go to the market, prices increase. If you buy bread today, 500, tomorrow you go, they tell you it's 550, not even 520, because everything increases now by 50 naira, not even 520, or 550, 600, and all of that. What does it do to people's savings? What does it really mean that if we say that Naira is losing its purchasing power, and the impact on the economy?
Hmm. Um, yeah, so what does it mean? I like to be practical, like I said. So I'll use a few years ago, when some of us were young and just got our jobs with the big accounting firms then for the first time. I remember I wanted to take time off to go abroad, maybe 2 years after I started working. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to travel and take a loan to do an MBA. And then my manager at the time, um, Mr. Late Lekon Salami of KPMG, he was my mentor. He told me that, why are you in a hurry to go anywhere? And then I said, when I get to do MBA abroad, I'll take a loan. And he told me, look, I can stay in this country and be anything. I remember that day he left a very big impression. I told him how I'll earn at least $100,000 a year if I get to finish an MBA from any of the Ivy League schools. And he laughed at me and said, who told you we don't earn that here? He told me that, look at this suit I'm wearing. This suit is $1,000.
Hmm.
I bought it. That singular, that kind of discussion I had with him, that conversation kept me in Nigeria for until I became an old man, because I was always hopeful. And I always thought that I could earn enough to be able to wear suits worth $1,000. But that is a mirage now. $1,000 in even as late as, I mean, even as recently, relatively recently, 10 years ago, $1,000. People who, uh, what is the value of $1,000 now? I remember also when we started this practice, at the time, one of the first policies we had was that we wanted to compete with the big accounting firms for brilliant people. So we said, well, we don't have a big name, but we wanted brilliant people. So we made a policy to pay our initial set of fresh associates a salary of at least $1,000 equivalent in Naira a month. We can't do that and remain in business now.
Hmm.
There's no big firm that can pay its fresh associate $1,000 equivalent and remain in business now. When we started working 22, 25 years ago, maybe within 6 months, I am sure that our salaries were close to $1,000 equivalent at the time. So the point is, you can see it in the in what you're able to buy. So inflation, you don't need anybody to tell you.
Hmm.
You're seeing more money. It's just numbers. But the quality of your life, what you could do, you can no longer do it. There are some of my mates or my friends who, as partners in accounting firms, can no longer go to London that they used to go shop around and do things from their salary that they used to do 15 years ago. So you're seeing more money in the number, numerical value, but what can you buy with it? I'm very worried that if we don't get things right in this country, in 2009, I went to South Africa and I bought $1 trillion note, Zimbabwean dollar, as a souvenir. I probably bought it for 10 rands or something then. I still have it somewhere in my archives. $1 trillion Zimbabwean note. That is what inflation does. It makes your money paper. You can't buy anything with it. It becomes worthless.
Okay.
So that is the time to hold on to your assets and not sell them. Because hopefully, if we manage to get our next our campaigns right, and we managed to get the political environment right, the political environment will probably shape things and we don't spiral and get to the level of people like Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
But very clearly, everybody can see, it's not something you read in a textbook, that, I'm earning 200K now, but my life is worse than it was when I was earning 40K 5 years ago. So that is inflation.
Now, since you brought me to the aspect of this electioneering, uh, if you take a look at Aso Rock and definitely the ruling party, you see that they always say, oh, the Nigerian economy is doing well compared to some years ago. What do you see when it comes to financial markets with what the politicians are saying? Vis-a-vis also, what do we need to do to make Nigeria recover and also make progress? Because I always say it on the show, I don't envy who the next leader will be, because the economy has to be revived, then we will now be on the path of progress. So what's your view?
Thank you, Nancy. There's something that I like to ask you. When you were growing up, right? When you were young and in school, you had the word oil boom,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yes.
You know, we all had that, oh, Nigeria had an oil boom in the 70s, that a certain president was supposed to have announced to the world that he had so much money that the problem is not what to do with it, but how to spend it. I don't know whether you had that as well.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yes, I
then he
did.
organized a festival of black arts with the money. And then sometime in the 90s, there was a war. There was an oil boom. The point is, do you think the Nigerian structure at the time was, anytime there's a global spiral in the prices of crude, we had a huge boom in our oil reserves. I mean, in our foreign reserves, we earned a lot of money. Everybody knows what the price of gasoline, how it went. People who don't live in Nigeria, who are in a different market, know that the price of gas, as they call it, will probably have moved from maybe say 1.99 a gallon or something to some premium brands selling close to $6 a gallon in 1 year. That tells you the kind of boom that there could have been. But the way our economy is now structured, we have a situation whereby um, what used to cause the boom, then we sell more crude at a huge price and we keep the difference. But what we are saying now is that the crude we are even selling now, when we sell them, we now import at the expensive price that and then we say we are still subsidizing. We can't have no more boom. The era of oil boom, no matter the price of gas internationally, the price of crude oil internationally, the our economic infrastructure is being is so is has retrogressed so much that we can no longer create the kind of booms we used to have in the 70s and in the 80s. What do we need to do? Simple. Fix our refineries. 8 years fixing refineries. We fix refineries. You see, people like to be political about these things, but when a country wants to do certain things, countries are supposed to be able to channel powers to what is the most urgent and critical, especially when countries declare war, for example. They marshal all their resources to say, if we don't stop this thing, it is going to kill us. I thought this was one of the things this government should have recognized in 2014-15, when they had very good goodwill from everybody, including some of us, to say, we wanted change in this country. One of the first things they could have done, because subsidy was already an issue, big issue, you know, an avenue for corruption. What did you get? Most of the people who were indicted in subsidy probes of the time even found their way into the government. The refineries, which we thought would become exceedingly urgent for them to fix so that we don't spend foreign exchange, you know, importing fuel at exorbitant prices and then giving, subsidy. You get what I mean? Subsidy that you cannot vouch, you cannot verify. You don't know where it is going to. Yeah. And then and then
Okay.
and then we have the unfortunate situation of the Russian war taking, contributing immensely to the price of crude and the price of petrol going, skyrocketing. And we are still importing with whatever we are selling. We are not keeping the difference. We are selling more, even though volume is also going down due to security. So tell me which magic, how, yeah, the politicians will always speak their speak. A politician is a marketer. He has to market no matter how bad it is. He will tell you he's a criminally minded merchant of hope. That is how you would describe a politician, the average one. There may be good ones, I don't know, I'm still looking for. But the point is that they give you hope and they will tell you what you want to hear, and when they will come back and still tell you, that they are the best things that have happened to you. But you have
Okay.
to always be practical and look at the facts. And that's why I asked you a simple question. If the economy was as good as it is, this is the kind of period where we normally have oil booms. Can you explain to me in one word why, we did not have an oil boom during this period when gas prices went up so high?
Okay.
That
Okay.
will answer your question.
Yeah. Mr. Joels, I think there's the much we can really take now because time is fast spent. At least thank you for answering some of those questions. And we can do this some other time to take a look at, perhaps we'll still be looking at the economy, and how it is impact on our Nigerians, even as elections are just, we are gradually approaching the elections in February, and let's see how the economy will first. But I want to say thank you for joining me this morning. Hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
All right.
Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, you too. I've been speaking with Eben Joels, who is the lead partner at Transact RSM International. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Please join us again tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on this channel. I'll be coming to you with another topic of interest that you need to pay attention to, and another guest. So I'll see you all again tomorrow. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. I am Nancy Nnaji. Bye for now.